Shalom alaikum, dear friends and honored guests. It is a true blessing to gather as a community to delve into the wisdom of the Torah portion before us, Korach. This parasha is not merely a historical narrative, it is a mirror reflecting the tensions, challenges, and aspirations that continue to resonate within each of us and within our communities. As we explore the story and its many layers, may we open our hearts to receive lessons that bring us closer to the divine harmony that balances unity with distinction. It's entitled Harmony Through Hierachy. Korach was a figure of complexity and contradiction. He was no common troublemaker, but a man of significant stature and spiritual ambition. From the tribe of Levi, and specifically the Kehat family, esteemed for their sacred duties, Korach dared to confront Moses and Aaron, leading a faction of 250 prominent leaders. They questioned the very foundation of spiritual leadership and communal hierarchy as Moses had established. At the heart of Korach's rebellion was a profound question. Why should Moses and Aaron raise themselves above the congregation of God? This was more than political ambition. It was an ideological challenge to the way holiness and service were defined within Israel. Korach argued for a radical egalitarianism. The entire community is holy, and God is within them. From his perspective, spiritual distinction that placed priests and Levites above the ordinary Israelites was a flawed concept. In fact, Korach himself coveted the high priesthood, revealing a paradox. He rejected the hierarchical structure but desired the highest rung on that very ladder. Understanding Korach's argument requires appreciating how the Torah views the relationship between the spiritual and material, between different roles within the nation. Moses divided the people into distinct groups with differentiated sanctity and responsibilities. The Israelites lived largely in the material world, farmers, merchants, laborers, engaged in the physical realities of life. The Levites were set apart for spiritual service, closer to God, and Aaron's family, the Kohanim, were charged with the most sacred duties in the sanctuary. This division was not about superiority for its own sake, but about roles aligned to a divine mission. Korach, however, questioned whether spiritual service should be considered superior to the materially engaged life. Was God truly closer to heaven than to earth? Does serving God by transcending the physical world carry more value than serving Him through living fully within it? To Korach, these were empty distinctions, and he sought to level the playing field by claiming that all forms of service and holiness were equal. But how did this challenge relate to what had just happened with the spies? In the previous portion, we saw how 10 of the 12 spies sent to scout the land of Canaan returned with a fearful and defeatist report, resisting the people's entry into the land. Their mistake was to reject the material world as a place of spiritual growth, preferring the protected clouds of glory existence in the desert, free from mundane concerns. Korach's rebellion might be seen as the counterpoint. He rejected the idea that spiritual life should be elevated above the material, insisting that the material world is just as holy as the spiritual. To deepen this understanding, we must examine the issue of the gifts to the priests, the matanot kehuna. God commanded that the Israelites dedicate the choicest portions of their produce and livestock to the Kohanim and Levites, who had no inheritance of land and relied on the people's offerings. These gifts symbolized the spiritual dimension within every person's life. Yet Korach refused to accept the spiritual hierarchy implied by calling these offerings uplifted or more holy than the rest. He questioned why the best of one's labor and life should be set apart as sacred, insisting instead that all parts of life, material and spiritual, are equally holy. The sages teach us that God desires a dwelling in the lowly realms of physical existence, midrash. This world, though called lowly, is in fact the ultimate stage for divine purpose, because it conceals God's presence the most. The physical world asserts its own existence loudly, I am, which hides the truth that there is none else besides him. Spiritual realities are more ethereal and selfless, always about expressing a higher truth. The physical, by contrast, is bluntly self-assertive. Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi, the founder of Chabad Chassidut, explains in his Tanya that this concealment is precisely why God's purpose focuses here. The mission of humanity is to transform the lowly realm into a sanctuary for the divine presence through sanctifying the material world. When a person lives with the awareness that all physical activities, work, eating, recreation, are in service of spiritual goals, then even the lowest realm becomes the loftiest expression of God's reality. This helps us understand why Korach's rejection of hierarchy was flawed. The spiritual ladder is not about putting one person above another to divide and conquer, but about orientation and aspiration. The materially involved individual looks up to spiritual ideals, recognizing those moments of holiness in the day as the peak of their efforts. The spiritual leader, meanwhile, depends on the material world being sanctified. Without this vertical relationship, without a clear sense of where each role stands, true unity dissolves into factionalism. The Talmud explicitly teaches that Korach's divisiveness is the archetype of all machloket, conflict. His notion of parallel but equal holiness, with no real connection or mutual responsibility between the parts, creates walls that isolate and divide. The failure to recognize an interdependent hierarchy leads to discord rather than peace. Yet Korach himself embodied the very spiritual yearning he claimed to oppose. His ambition for the high priesthood was real, even if he denied the legitimacy of spiritual ranks. This contradiction reveals a universal human truth. All of us seek to grow beyond our current place, to ascend the ladder of spiritual refinement. Korach's mistake was twofold. He desired the ascent without fully committing, and promoted commitment without embracing the desire to grow. This disconnect, likened in Midrash to being consumed by fire and swallowed by the earth, doomed his rebellion. The miracle of Aaron's staff blossoming and bearing almonds illustrates a parallel teaching. Rather than breaking natural law outright, God caused the staff to bud, blossom, and bear fruit through natural stages, yet defying nature's usual limitations. This shows us that true spiritual elevation uplifts nature from within, respecting and refining it rather than negating or ignoring it. Korach's mocking of the laws governing holiness, such as the obligation to give the best gifts to the Kohanim, reveals a failure to grasp the sacred intention behind these commands. The Yalkut Shimoni recounts how Korach ridiculed a poor widow who, despite the many laws restricting and shaping her agricultural life, faithfully gave her gifts to the priests. When she tried to survive by selling her field and raising sheep, the demands continued, driving her to despair. Korach used this to sow contempt, accusing Moses and Aaron of cruelty, not understanding that these laws sanctify life's material side by dedicating its best to God. Maimonides emphasizes that anything set aside for God must be the best and most beautiful to honor the divine. This principle is reflected in all mitzvot, from building synagogues to feeding the hungry. True holiness means offering God the finest we have, reflecting gratitude and reverence. Ultimately, the Torah portion named after Korach challenges us to wrestle with the tension between unity and hierarchy, equality and distinction, spiritual aspiration, and material reality. It teaches us that true peace and harmony do not come from erasing differences or pretending all paths are identical. Rather, peace arises when distinctions exist within a framework of mutual respect, interdependence, and a shared purpose that uplifts and connects all. As we close, let us remember that Korach's story is both a caution and a call. It warns of the dangers of denying the divine order of roles and relationships. It also calls us to embrace the spiritual ambition Korach had, coupled with the humility and commitment that he lacked. In our own lives and communities, may we seek to honor our unique roles, uplift one another, and sanctify every aspect of existence so that the lowly realms may truly become a dwelling place for God's presence. May this teaching inspire us to build bridges, cherish our diversity, and ascend together the ladder of holiness with hearts united in faith and love. Shalom uvracha, peace and blessings upon you all.